All right, we're joined by Coach Justin Hamilton. Coach, I'll let you set it up and then we'll take some questions.
What's up, everybody? Appreciate you guys having me again. Wanted to take this time as the first time with you guys just to officially welcome Jack Tyler and JC Price. Jack obviously having been here, but JC, two guys from the Brotherhood, welcome him back. Two guys that have earned it. We're very excited about having them, and I know the guys are excited, so looking forward to see how that blends with the position groups and the defensive unit, the meeting room with us, and excited about moving forward. So be happy to for you guys to fire away.
Norm, why don't you start?
Hey Justin, you guys obviously lost a guy in Darrell Tap who was made quite an impact in a short amount of time. It seems like just in terms of attitude and approach and some of the recruiting strides that he was going to make. Seems what does that mean for you guys to lose him? I know there's a part of you that's very happy for him to have this opportunity, but it does leave a gap. I'm sure that JC and others are going to have to fill.
Yeah, I think Darrell Tap is a once in a lifetime type of person, coach, player, all the above. And he did an excellent job, as you mentioned, with creating relationships, with really anytime you were around him, he encouraged you to be better at whatever your role was in any way. And a big part of replacing him was knowing that you're not going to find another Darrell Tap as far as him being one of one. But with JC, he brought so much of what Tap had, the former player aspect, the guy that had played the position, a guy that is blue collar in every sense of the phrase, a guy that has recruiting connections and ties from his experience in coaching at various spots, and a guy that he also in his own way challenges people to be better at what they do or in their roles. And for us and for me, it was really, he was the right guy, the right fit with Coach Tierlink also. That's another part of when you have two D-line coaches, of adding one to it. So we feel really excited about JC. I know he was super excited to be back, his wife being back, his family being able to come down here. And once our kids are able to spend more time around him, I think they're going to see all the same positive qualities that we see.
JC was a grad assistant, I guess, during your playing days at Tech.
He was a GA in 2002 and I believe 2003. We were talking about 2002 today, but he and I go back that far.
Yeah, how strange is that to have? I mean, I know it's part of the business. Obviously, these things happen, but almost a couple decades down the road to have him circle back and you guys talk about that much and talk about the old days.
That's a great question, Norm. We do, for one, and for two, it just goes to show, like, eventually, again, when we get more time around our kids, we'll be able to show to them, you never know. Like, it may be me one day calling you for a job, and that those relationships go forever. And it'll be good for them to be able to see living proof of that and not just hear about it like it's folklore. But JC was a guy back then that he's the same guy right now today as he was in 2002 when I was a 19-year-old. So that's another part of why it is that I felt so excited about getting him here, probably why he wanted to come back, a part of it. And again, going to show that when we talk to you guys about connections and brotherhoods and lasting impressions, we really mean that, and it is really a fact of life.
Couple less thing from me. You had a couple guys on the defensive side of the transfer market, and Jordan and Tay. What do they bring for you up front and in the back?
Before up front and in the back, what they both bring, Jay Will coming from the Clemson program, which has obviously been a very winning pedigree over the last however many years on their run. He brings that, but he also brings a veteran presence, a guy that we actually were a couple weekends ago bowling, and there were some younger guys around, and I was joking with him saying, you remember when that was you? In those conversations in that style, and he was kind of just low key and small grin and was just like, yeah. So it's good to have a veteran presence that you bring in with him, a guy that, you know, we want him to come in and compete, and I think he's going to get respect from his teammates because of the type of guy he is, but he's really going to stamp it when he shows how he works, how he practices, a daily preparation and a daily diligence to his jobs. And it's the same thing with Tay. When we talked to Tay, when he was officially in the portal and I got to know him a little bit, I knew about him but didn't really get to know him until he was officially in the portal. And Darrell Tap, again, he talked about having experience with him at Vanderbilt, that this is the right guy for our locker room. And that was really a big impact for him, where, you know, you got another guy that's a veteran presence that can help show the way a little bit for some younger guys that we feel like have very high ceilings, but he'll have an impact in their work ethic, their daily habits. And he's a guy that's got a lot of experience in the SEC. So on the field, you know, it'll be a good chance when we get out to work with him and see what he does well, what roles we want to put him in, and then from there, that impact should translate as well.
Thanks.
Mike Nislett.
Yeah, Justin, your first spring practice coming up. Do you throw out the plan that you came up with last year, or do you modify it? And what's kind of, I mean, when you think about the year you had and all the disruptions and not being able to practice right, what's kind of the focus for spring? And does it change that in you know, in a normal year, you know, you just be using these 15 practices, but this year, is there something that stands out where you feel like you need to accomplish, maybe that you wouldn't have normally had focused on in a spring camp?
Mike, I appreciate that question because that's a very complex answer. Really, it's a great question. But what we do, we don't throw out everything from last year, and we don't carry over everything from last year. The biggest thing is, with the exception of JC being the new coach coming in, we have coaches now that know their players, that they know what their skill sets are, they know their learning habits, they know what they can do. And that now, when we went back over our season and looked at structurally what we were doing, we saw that by the midway to last third of the season, that we established some things that are good that need to continue on. And we also found that some of the things that we did early, we don't need to bring. We need to cancel those. We found that some of the things that we brought in that point midway through or last third of the season, that we should have done more of those. So it gave us a chance to really take a step back and evaluate. So much of the season was you were just trying to survive that day or survive that week. So in my evaluation of myself, I kind of eliminated all the circumstances of COVID and of all the things that we couldn't plan for, because that's really, even if next year, I mean, knock on wood, hopefully it's not that way, but even if it is a similar system, we have a precedent for that where we didn't at the time. So what we've done and what we're doing is we're taking the concepts that we like, the concepts that we want to use, and we're ironing it out so that each coach, we all speak the exact same verbiage and language. So when a kid hears a certain word from a D-line coach, he hears the same words from the corners coach or the safeties coach or the linebackers coach, and it always means the same things. So we speak it that way. And then we have done more so addition by subtraction, where we look on the board of all the things that we did, and it's been more of delete, 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 taking things away, and then now putting our focus on what we've got, what we're keeping, what is locked in, and fine-tuning it so that it becomes a system of rules and a system of, when we get into spring, where we can teach from a concept standpoint rather than just in this call or just in that call. This is what you're doing, so that concepts carry over. If you have young guys, they can learn it in theory better that way. Or if you have a situation where you've got to replace a guy for an injury, or you got to replace people if COVID continues, those concepts have been taught and baked in since spring began, so that it should carry over into the season.
And with getting Devin Taylor back, convinced him to take the extra year eligibility, do you view him kind of continuing at that safety spot, or do you move him back to corner? What's your kind of plan for him with getting him back?
That's another good question and interesting question. I've talked to Dev numerous times and been a part. His father's a big part of his life also, and a big part of his development as a player. Dev to me is a DB. I don't think you label him as a corner. I don't think you label him as a safety. We'll start him where he was at the end of the season because he developed and learned a lot. He did a lot of good things there, and he has value there. I think the biggest thing for him this spring is being able to put him situationally in spots where whether he's playing on the board it says corner or on the board it says safety, he's playing in spots where he's playing some man-to-man. He's playing some short zone coverages, he's playing some deep zone coverages, and he's blitzing. And it gives us an opportunity. We really didn't have a chance with him to see him do individual drills or to see him go through small elements of structure or of techniques to really see what he did well. He just was tossed in, the bus was running, and he was thrown out to run on the fly. And then I think we'll have a better idea of what it is that he does well and what he does best, or where his limitations may be, and we'll be able to put him in a spot or in spots that better accent his good traits that he has, and then also gives other guys chances if they have things that they do well in other areas to create two roles by fine-tuning one.
And with Dax Hollyfield, the expectations for him were really high coming in. He's had to play kind of outside of the position you guys had envisioned. Now probably moving over to Mike. Do you feel he's going to be poised to have a kind of a breakout year and kind of reach where you guys kind of envisioned him to be, since you wanted to maybe split time like he has been the last couple of years in practice and things like that?
Yeah, to me, Dax is going to be poised regardless. No matter what his role or what his jobs are, he's going to be poised. That's who he is. For him, and it's really with new age recruiting, and by that I mean with how much attention is put on these kids when they're young, when they're being recruited, when they have offers with all the recruiting services or social media. There's a lot of expectations that they didn't ask for or they didn't create. And Dax falls into that category where there was a lot that was put on him that he never asked for. He just wanted to come and go to work. So he's already met those expectations. He's one of the best teammates in our locker room. And I think for him, we as coaches, we fall victim a little bit because he's so smart that you feel like you can just, Dax will learn it. Dax will know what to do. Dax will be in the right spot, to where we have to be careful that we don't ask too much of him, whether that be sharing roles, whether that be playing one linebacker, playing the other. So giving him, he's going to try to learn it all anyways because that's how he's wired, but giving him a role and giving him a spot and allowing him to make that his own, I do think will help him. But as far as breakout and those types of things, in my mind, statistically, maybe he hasn't broke out how some people thought he would, but he's already broken out. I mean, he is an absolute foxhole guy, whether he's in the game or out of the game, and the type of guy that if he's in the game, the other 10 guys are going to know what to do. And there's a lot of value in that doesn't show up on a stat sheet. So he's done that, and hopefully we'll just continue to help him develop. And if he gets those stats, it will be because he earned it.
Thanks.
Andy?
Justin, you didn't get all of the seniors that could have come back this year to come back this year, but you did get Emmanuel Belmar and Deshaun Crawford. How important is it to have that experience in the trenches like that? And do you sense two guys that had their injury troubles last year that are sort of about to prove something?
Yeah, I think, Andy, it's extremely important to have veteran presence. I mean, in college football, I think we saw this year, I mean, you have Alabama and Clemson, Ohio State, that really good programs, but when you have teams that have veteran presence and leadership on their teams in college, I think that's an advantage. And for those two guys, they're both guys that, for me, the process of a college athlete, you really don't become your best until you have to go through struggles. And both of those guys have experienced those things. It's been unfortunate and it's not been to their fault. But that's the hope. And that's in the conversations with each one of them. It's always talking about knowing what you've gone through, knowing what you're going through, knowing what you're experiencing, and using that to make you be more motivated to train, more motivated to eat right, more motivated to get your sleep, more motivated to prepare. And I think both of those guys, having some age and having some experience, will do that. And again, with both, it'll be a time will tell type of thing. They got to get back in condition. They got to get back into game mode. But for both of them, love both of them and what they bring to us. And also now, hopefully them having experienced some struggles of their own will now help younger guys when they experience the inevitable struggle, which then builds chemistry, builds culture, and builds unity on your defense.
And what kind of expectations do you set for a guy like Amari Barno, who had a great year last year, but still in a lot of ways felt like he was just sort of scratching the surface of what he's capable of?
Yeah, that's a good question too. Us as coaches, we don't really set expectations as far as numbers or as far as stats. I think the expectation we set for him or for anybody is every day be the best version of yourself and try to make it better. And in Amari's case, he really is, as you said, just scratching the surface of what his ability could be. I joked with him not long ago about, remember when you were sitting in my office and he was a little bit apprehensive about moving from linebacker to DN, and just like, hey, what if I asked you to move back? And I was joking, but he was like, nah, I'm good. And knowing that he feels that way, embracing the role, knowing that he has game experience, the expectation is that now, hey, the same thing that got you to this point where now you're having some praises lauded your way, what got you here was every day you came out with the mindset of, I'm going to do what's asked of me to the best of my ability. So I think that's the expectation we place on him. That's realistic. And that also now will encourage him to be whatever his best is and to make it better.
Is there a weight you would like to see him get up? I know he's pretty slight for a defensive end last year. Do you kind of leave that to the strength guys to figure that out?
Yeah, you leave that to the strength guys. I mean, we in our minds have an idea, and the biggest thing is for him to handle the duration. But with the strength guys, they're much better evaluators of the body types and of the stress load that his body can handle. I mean, we don't want to put weight on him just to say he looks in the program better. We want to make it functional and make him or give him the opportunity to be his best. And he does need to put on some weight for the wear and tear that happens in the trenches. But at the same time, it needs to be at a level that's conducive for him and not restrictive of him. And that's really, again, that's one of the things that the strength staff is going to be better at than us, but we can help encourage him once they give us something there.
Thank you.
Mike Barber.
Yeah, Justin, could you take us through just how the connection with Coach Price comes about? I mean, obviously, you guys know him. He's a Tech guy, but how did it come about in this case?
So Mike, I see you got kids, I guess, with the rainbows and the that's what my board looks like. But
all the important stuff.
That's right. That's right. When I was at UVA Wise, I can't remember if it was 2012, 2013. I started really digging into trying to travel and visit other coaches to learn and to be around those buildings. And one of those was at Marshall. And called JC up, and JC was like, whatever you need, whenever you want to come here, come on. So I woke up, in the middle of the night basically, and drove to Huntington. And we visited there. And that was the first time we'd really spent much time together since we had both been here. He was at JMU. We'd see each other at one-day camps and things like that. But we really spent time together. And quickly realized that, again, the same thing I said earlier, in 2002, this is the same guy today in 2012 or 13. And we started just bouncing ideas around off each other, and that part of it was good. And then he had a family by then, so learning some about that. I was newly married, had a newborn son in 2013. Went back up there another time when I was at VMI, and did the same thing. And then we were traveling also. Went with VMI to visit once, and then I went another time. We did a walkthrough there. And in the walkthrough, he came down and got me and was like, come up to the building, say hello. Some of the guys were still there, and just meeting them and talking some ball. So we kind of kept in touch that way. And then we stayed in touch over the years and had just been in contact. You know, we would talk about a prospect, or we would talk about a concept D-line play. We would talk about Virginia Tech, whatever it was. So we just kind of stayed in touch. And then when the job came available this time, when Coach Fuente and I just kind of went over a checklist of things that were important for this job, he was the right blend of all the above, and it was the right time. I know he's always wanted to be back here, but now he is, and it was the right time.
I'm interested also in that recruiting position he has as the defensive recruiting coordinator. What's kind of your role with that, his role? How does that work, and how do you envision that?
My role is basically to oversee, to always make it a part of the conversation, which I really don't have to. Our recruiting staff does a really good job, and our coaches do a really good job, but that would be my role in it. And then to make sure that we're having the right contact with the right people, whether that be the prospect or their circle, that it's present, so we're always able to see each guy's name and we know what we've talked to him about. We have the pertinent information about him. And his role in that is essentially to, when we may be in the middle of a D-staff meeting talking about how we want to zone blitz, and then when we take a 5-minute coffee break, that when we come back, he says, hey, just real quick, I want to make sure we're covering who Coach Smitty you've talked to, who Coach Link you've talked to, who Coach Tyler you've talked to, who Coach Ham you've talked to. Make sure, hey, we need to get on with this kid's uncle, or we need to get on with this kid's 7-on-7 coach or high school coach. It's really, it's an informal role, but that's the way I envision it and that job. And I think that that's important, even though we have a recruiting staff, that's important because it makes it constant in our minds.
Makes sense. And last one for me, and I admit it's a little random, but you mentioned bowling as an outing. What kind of things can you do right now to get some chemistry? And I know things are still a little bit different with the virus and all. What kind of things can you do to build those bonds?
That's a great question too, and that's a lot of thought went into that when we were in our off time, December, January. The large groups are difficult. In bowling, that was the purpose of only taking the new guys or having the new guys go, was we could keep it small and space out. And a big part of that for me that was important was my wife and kids were there. And I want our guys, especially the young guys, they're not thinking that way yet, to see a coach as a husband, as a father, and